Hello and welcome to my channel. If you've been here before, welcome back. My name is Alfonso Peluso and I'm a Studio Associate Professor in the College of Architecture at IIT, the home of the legendary Mies van der Rohe, and I'm adjunct faculty at Columbia College Chicago in the Interior Architecture program. Shout out to all my students. I hope you're doing well. It's Memorial Day, so I hope everyone is taking some time off for themselves, and give a little moment of silence for all that served in the military. Alright, it's a beautiful sunny day in Chicago. It's 83 degrees. Hope everybody's doing well. Today we're going to look at TwinMotion Basics, so another rendering engine video. So a real-time rendering engine, I should say. So the real-time rendering engine TwinMotion. So we're going to look at setting up an image like you see on the screen here, and I have an outline of that in Rhino. So a pretty big outline just looking at TwinMotion Basics in Rhino. So before we do that, head on over to YouTube, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel, go ahead and click on subscribe, click on all, and click on the little bell to receive all the notifications. Also, connect with me on Instagram at my first name _ my last name. See what I'm up to with all my students. Just finished a great year of teaching at IIT and Columbia College, so some really great stuff. See when I'm making my latest videos. Alright, real-time rendering engines. You can see I've been making a series on that, starting with Enscape, and maybe by the time you're watching this, I'll have Enscape, TwinMotion, and Lumion. That's my goal. Right now we're getting into TwinMotion. So head on over to twinmotion.com and you can download your free trial. What's great about TwinMotion is it's free for students. So if you go to pricing, you'll end up seeing education license $0, and that's really great, and I hope they keep that up. Also, you're going to want to download TwinMotion, and I just downloaded the 2023 version, which is very new. You're going to need TwinMotion. You're also going to need Datasmith. So Datasmith is something by Unreal Engine. So if you go to unrealengine.com and you search up Datasmith, you can find this. I just typed in Datasmith and I found this page. And if you go down, you'll see Get the Plugins, and you'll see a bunch of plugins on the page that pops up. And you'll want to get the plugin for Rhino, since we're looking at Rhino today. So you'll want to download that exporter. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and close TwinMotion down. Okay, so I've just closed that all the way down. So here in the outline, I'm showing you to download the student version of TwinMotion. This is 2023 1.1. So you'll want to download the latest version. And then the Datasmith toolbar is going to show up in Rhino. And if you don't see it in Rhino, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go to the main menu, Tools, Toolbar Layout. And under Datasmith for Rhino, you're going to want to check that on, and that toolbar will show up for you. I already have it out and I've docked it. So I have it out and I've docked it up here. So I have it under Datasmith. And what I can do is I can synchronize my file to TwinMotion. Okay, so let's look at how you open up TwinMotion. So TwinMotion shows up in this Epic Games launcher, and I can double click on the Epic Games launcher, and I can click on the TwinMotion tab, and I can choose Launch. And just notice I'm choosing the latest version, 2023 1.1. I can click on Launch. Okay, and by default there's some templates that you can work with, just lighting templates, and we're going to go ahead and choose Architecture Day and Night Skies, and when we get a little later into the video we can see all these day and night skies that come in for us. So that's just one template to start with. There's going to be many more to choose from, so I'll choose Open. Okay, so this is just a default scene here. So what I want to do is I want to make some Rhino geometry and then synchronize that with TwinMotion. So I'm going to head on over to Rhino and I'm going to model some Rhino geometry. Okay, so in Rhino I'm using a new file, and that new file is going to be in inches, feet, and inches. Large objects, inches, feet, and inches. So something larger than a truck, I use large objects, and then this is going to be in the unit inches, feet, and inches. And I'm going to set my grid up. So I'm going to type in DOC, enter, and I'm going to set my grid. I'm going to click on grid, and I'm going to choose 100 grid lines, minor grid lines every 12 inches, major grid lines every 10 minor, so every 10 feet, and the snap spacing I'm going to set to 12 inches. Okay, and I'm going to make some geometry here. So for layer 1, I'm going to call this one floor, make that current, and my grid snap is on. I'm going to type in box, and I'm snapping to the origin, and I'm going to go over 20 feet, so 2 of the large heavy lines that show up, so 2 of the large rectangles I should say, so 20 by 40. So that's going to be this, 20 by 40, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm going to go down -6 inches. And I'm going to go ahead and make this shaded. So we see the floor. Now I'm going to make a patio. So I'm going to make a layer called patio. And I'm going to type in box. And I'm going to make that one 10 feet outside of the other one. So I'm going to click on that. And click on that corner and go down -6 inches. And if I look in a front view, they're at the same location. So I'm going to take that patio and move it down 6 inches. Okay, now they're one sitting one on top of the other. And my last one I'm going to make for now is a layer for grass. Make that current. And I'm going to make a box. This time it's going to be 20 feet outside of the patio, so 20 feet all around. And I'll make that -6 inches. And I'm going to go ahead and move that down 1 foot. Okay, let's look at that in perspective mode. Alright, so I have my floor, my patio, and my grass. I'm going to go ahead and save this file. Go ahead and save that. Alright, so now we're going to synchronize this with TwinMotion. So TwinMotion is open over here. It does find the file automatically. Now whether we go to File Import first or we go to Synchronize, I'm not sure which is better. So let's just look at both of those. So we're going to go here and we're going to click on Synchronize. And we'll go on over to TwinMotion. So nothing here yet. So we do have to import first. So I can click on Import at the bottom, or I can go to File Import from the main menu. So from the bottom, I just have to click on the plus, and this is a direct link. So it's a direct link. We're going to want to keep the hierarchy. So that's important. We want to keep hierarchy. And that's really all you have to do there. And then click on import. And then you see that file comes in. So that's fantastic. I want to change some materials and see how that gets updated inside of TwinMotion. So let's look at doing that. So I'm going to close my import tab here. It's a little hard to work side by side in TwinMotion and Rhino. We can try it. So I'm just going to tuck this on over to the side and put my Rhino in front of it, make my Rhino a little smaller. Okay, so we're looking at these side by side as much as possible here. I can click on this little icon and it'll maximize. And I can try moving this over. That's a little tricky to do. Okay, so I have my Rhino on top. So I'm going to make a material for my floor because I want these to all have different materials inside of TwinMotion. And I want to make sure that that's showing up. So I'm going to click on my floor and I'm going to make this material, I'm going to call it floor. I'm going to make it custom. And I'm going to change its color to like a brownish color, kind of like a wood texture or wood material. Okay, so I'm making that. And then I'm going to make my patio. I'm going to go ahead and make this, call this patio. And I'm going to make it a custom material. And I'm going to make it gray. Okay. And I'm going to make my grass texture or grass material. I'm going to call this grass. And I'll make it custom. And I'll make the color green. Okay, if I make this a rendered view in Rhino, I should see all the different colors here. My grass isn't turning out green, so let's take a look at that. I didn't. Oh, okay. For some reason that didn't hold. So custom. So it's good to double check it with the rendering settings. Okay, there we go. So we have all three of our colors there. Changes back to shaded just to save some memory. I'm going to keep saving as I go. And I'm going to click on synchronize. Alright, awesome. So that's synchronized in TwinMotion. Loving that. Alright, very good. So let's look at our outline and see where we are and what we want to cover. So we've looked at downloading the student version, the DataSmith toolbar. We've modeled some Rhino geometry. We've used a direct link to synchronize. Another thing is the F key works really great in TwinMotion to zoom extents. So if you select an object in TwinMotion and you press the F key, it zooms to the extents of that object. So that's pretty great. Alright, let's go back to Rhino and see what we're going to look at next. So next we're going to look at the preferences in Rhino, or preferences in TwinMotion. So let's go ahead and look at the preferences in TwinMotion using the Control-P shortcut for preferences. So if I head over to TwinMotion, I'm just going to maximize TwinMotion for now. And I'm going to use Control-P. And I'm going to go to Appearance. And what I can do under Appearance is I can make my scale of my interface smaller or larger. So if I go to 75 and click OK, it's a little bit smaller, and then my rendering shows up bigger. For purposes of the video, I'm going to leave it under Appearance. I'm going to leave it at 100%. I can go larger if I wanted to make those bigger. You see what happens there. The rendering gets super small. So Control-P, and we'll go to Appearance, and I'll just leave it at 100. Okay, the other thing that I want to look at is the navigation in TwinMotion and how you can set that to be just like it is in Rhino in this case. So we're going to click on this toolbar to get it a little bigger, or this button to get it bigger, and we're going to go to the eye, and we're going to go down to navigation. We're going to click on navigation. We're going to click on show navigation, and under show navigation we're going to click on the gear and we're going to change it to Rhino. So I think that is one of the greatest things. I've always wanted that in my rendering software, for it to be the same as in my modeling software. And that I'm just loving that. So I make that Rhino, and now I can navigate just like I would in Rhino. And I can get rid of this little navigation toolbar by going to the eye, going down, and choosing hide navigation. I'll click on my little tab here. Alright, let's see what we're going to do next. So we'll go back to Rhino, and we've looked at the main menu, edit preferences. We've looked at navigation, click on the icon, click on the gear, set to act like Rhino. We've looked at using Rhino and TwinMotion side by side. The other thing we can look at is we can look at the stats panel in TwinMotion, and hopefully I'll remember to come back to this once we have more things loaded in there. And just to remind myself of that, I'm going to do that by just putting a little note. Check the stats again. Alright. Alright, because the stats, the more complex the scene is, it changes the stats. So where are the stats? So if I go to TwinMotion, lower left, I can click on stats. I get a frame rate, so that's a pretty high frame rate right now. I imagine that will go down once we load this scene up. It's showing how much of my graphic processor, my graphics card is using, how much my computer is using. So this is pretty cool. File loading time has all these little options, the amount of polygons, the amount of objects we have in here. So this is really great. And we'll come back to looking at stats again. Alright, what's up next? So just going to kind of go through and look at the sun angles and the ambience and the sky settings inside of TwinMotion. Okay, so just to kind of go over what we're looking at here. So in the upper right, we have all of our files, or all of our layers, I should say. If I make this bigger, I can see all of our layers that came in from Rhino, and there's floor, and there's an extrusion, there's patio, and there's an extrusion, there's grass, and there's an extrusion. I can click on these extrusions and it selects those objects. So that's pretty cool. So in TwinMotion, they're not called layers, they're called containers. So just something to keep in mind. And I'm going to make this window a little bit smaller. I can always scroll down if I need to. Okay, so under we're going to go to media at the bottom. And you see we have all these different skies to choose from. So all these different presets. So I want to have some more Rhino geometry before we start digging into these presets. So let's go back over to Rhino. I want some things that will cast shadows and make some reflections for us. So I'm going to go back over to Rhino, and I'm going to model a few more things here. So I'm going to go ahead and model some walls. And I'm just going to do that using box. And I'm going to make that 20 feet wide, so 20 feet, 6 inches deep, so 20 feet, 6 inches, and I'm going to make it 10 foot tall. And I'm going to go ahead and make another one of these, type in box. This time I need to see my grid, so I'm going to go to wireframe, and I'm going to snap my grid right there. So this time I can't just type in the 20 feet, 6 inches, because I'm not starting from the origin. So since I'm not starting from the origin, I have to put in the @ symbol, and then 20 feet, 6 inches by 10 feet tall. Alright, let's take a look at how that is looking and shaded. Alright, great. And then I want to make my roof. And I'll change that color to not be white so we can see it in the screen. I'll make it orange. And I'm going to go ahead and copy the floor. And I'm using my endpoint snap from the bottom of the floor to the top of the wall. And I'm going to change that to be on my roof layer. Okay, everything looks good there. Oh, something doesn't look good there. It moved on me, so let me just move it back. Okay, looking good. Alright, I'm going to save that. I'm going to put materials on these while I have it here. So the wall, I'm going to just put wall and make that custom. And I'm going to change its color. And I'm going to make the roof. Call it roof, make it custom. And I'm going to leave this one white. Okay, so let's go to rendered view just to make sure it's what we want. Okay, that is what we want. Alright, we'll save it. We'll synchronize it. We'll head over to TwinMotion. And here we go. We have it right here. Alright, this is great. So we want to look at the sun angles. Okay, so if I click on Ambience, or Ambience, however you want to say that, the properties at the bottom will pop up. So I can click on the properties there, and I can change the time of day. So that's great. It's a real-time sky, so you see the sun moving across it. I can change the exposure value of that to be lighter or darker. I can do things like change the weather, and I want to look at this in more detail in a video all by itself, but you see you get some rain across there and reflections of the rain. It has the location for the north, HDRI environment, all kinds of things, horizon, and that's something I'll dive into in a later video. Also, what it has is what we imported from the very beginning. When we started this scene, we started with a whole bunch of skies, and that's showing up under media. You can see all these different skies that show up that I can choose from, and that sky affects the lighting in the scene. So for example, if I click on 2-day, okay, so I'm getting a different shadow location for that. If I click on 3-day, and so on. I don't like the way it orientates it, to be honest with you. But if I go to night, I can get night, more night. So that's pretty cool. Those are all there to choose from, and that came with the template. Sunrise. So we have a bunch of sunrises, so that's pretty cool. So let's look at that a little closer, though. Let's go to, because what it does do is it does lock the time of day. So if I change this to day, it locks the time of day. I can't change the time of day. I can change the exposure, but I can't change the time of day. I can change the weather, but I can't change the time of day. Okay, so how do we start to save? So that's looking at, I know back on my outline, it's showing us, if we bring this up, it's showing us sun angles and sky settings, and we looked at both of those. So now it's time to look at the camera and look at view management and how to save our cameras. So we head back over to TwinMotion. I can save this particular camera view. I can go ahead and save that by clicking on the plus, and it adds an image at the very end, and I can click on the 3 dots here and I can rename it. So I'm going to call this one camera 01. Okay, so that's there for me. And then I'm going to look at one where I manually set the daylight. So I'm going to quit the media mode, and I'm going to go to Ambience or Ambience, and I'm going to go to properties, and I'm going to change this view a little bit here. So we have a different camera, and I'm going to change the time of day. I want to get shadows like that, where it's lighting up the front of it. Okay, so that's my time of day, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click on the plus again, adds another image, and I'm going to click on rename, and I'm going to call this camera 2. Alright, so now I can go back and forth between my camera 1 and my camera 2, and those settings for that sun will change, those sticks, so that's pretty good. Now, I will say there's no camera object, camera and target object, which if you watch my other videos, I'm really big on that when making cameras. I really like a camera and a target. In this case, there is no camera and target, so I'm a little bit outside my comfort zone, just kind of panning and orbiting to make these cameras. but that's just the way it is in TwinMotion. Alright, what's next on our agenda? Okay, so now we're going to look at materials. We're going to look at standard materials and a grass material and see how this works. So if we go back over to TwinMotion, at the bottom of the screen there's a materials button, and all those materials from Rhino came in: the roof, the wall, the grass, the patio, the floor. So that's really great. And there's a floor tiles. I think that is TwinMotion's default ground is set to floor tiles. Alright, so we can start to change some of these materials. Like, let's make our patio reflective. So I click on patio, and over on the right it pops up for us. We can change its color, we can change its grunge, like that's like making it worn, and we can change its luminosity. If I scroll down a little more to roughness, the lower the roughness, the more reflective it's going to be. So I'm going to go ahead and lower that down. And there you see we get some reflectivity of the building. So that's pretty cool. I want to change the grass. So I'm going to go ahead and click on grass. And if I scroll up to the top, okay, it has my color here. But I'm going to try dropping in a map on top of that, a grass map, and see how that works. So let's go over to materials, and there's ground, and there's nature, and there is a grass 5, which is a nice dark desaturated grass. So I'm going to click on that and drop it onto my grass here. Alright. And we can do things like change the size and the scale of it. So I'm going down here in the properties. You notice it named it grass 5. I just dragged and dropped it. I can change the scale of this grass. So I'm making it like about that. We're gonna make, it's never gonna look real, the grass map, but we're gonna paint some grass on top of it. I can mess with the rotation of it. Alright, so there's my grass material. So you see a little bit of picking from the library assets and also bringing the materials in from Rhino. So that's really great. Alright, what's next on the agenda? So visual settings, effects, and filters. So we can look at doing some effects and filters on here. So let's find where that is in TwinMotion. So in TwinMotion, we're going to go to Media, and we're going to go to Effects. So there is a contrast that we can do right here inside of TwinMotion, which is really good. So I could desaturate the image if I want to desaturate it, which I like some desaturated colors. I can look at the color gradient, which is, they're like filters, even though they're not called filters. They are like filters that you would find like in Instagram. So you can change those color gradients, and I think that's, some of them are named after ones that you would find with cameras, using standard cameras back in the day. Okay, so I can look at changing those, and I can choose none for now. I can use filters, and the filters are really like the different rendering styles. So if you're trying to do something like with lines, you can add that in here. Right there, you can do line light, so it's not so heavy. You can do hidden line. So you can do a lot of different types of rendering if you're not looking for a realistic rendering. Alright, so let's set that to none. Alright, we are cruising through this. Clay render, we can do clay renders, and we can pick the color for that. So let's see. That's updating in real time. So, you know, just without materials, you can do a clay render. Alright, we'll turn that off. Alright, so the next thing I think we want to look at is the assets. Some of the assets that come with TwinMotion for people and trees. So I'm going to go ahead and click on characters, and I'm going to click on posed humans, and there's a whole bunch I can choose from here. So I'm gonna go to summer. I'm in the summer mood. It's almost summer here. So these people like Ethan, he's like ready to go to the beach. So I'll drop Ethan in. Okay, and I can click on Ethan. And if you're having a hard time clicking on Ethan, you can always go to the not the components, but the containers. It's going to take me a while to remember that one, but the containers. And I can select Ethan, and I can click on the little gumball like it is in Rhino, and I can rotate Ethan around. Alright, so there's Ethan there. And I can turn Ethan on and off. Shows up in my containers. So everything I need is right here in the containers. Alright, so that's just bringing in, one asset at a time. And if I go back to library, I can go to vegetation, I can go to trees, and I'm going to bring in this China berry tree. So I'm just going to drag and drop it. It's a pretty cool tree right there. And then I get the shadows off to the right, I get the reflections. I want some reflections on my walls, so let's go back to materials. We didn't look at changing the default material settings, so let's go to materials and let's click on wall, and that shows up over here, and we can change the roughness. I can lower the roughness down, get some reflections on that, maybe a little bit too much. Alright, so that's looking pretty good. How about the floor? Let's get a little reflectivity on the floor too. I don't want the floor to be left out. Okay, this is all looking pretty good. Now I haven't saved, which is a little bit scary. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and file save it. File save as. This is going to be our TwinMotion basics. Okay, let's head on over to Rhino while that saves. Okay, so we're looking at the asset manager, and we just placed in a person and we placed in a tree. Now we want to look at this really awesome function, which is painting the landscape. We're going to paint some grass, and we're going to paint some trees. We can even paint some people. So we're going to look at doing that. It's a really great feature inside of TwinMotion. Okay, so one thing I do want to mention is you shouldn't think that you're not going to have to spend time in Photoshop with a still image. You're going to want to add some effect to these people. You're going to want to add some effects to these trees because they're in a 3D environment, so they're a little bit, kind of not so realistic. They're a little bit hokey in a sense, so you want to make that change in Photoshop. You want to blur them, use all the techniques that I have a video on importing people into Photoshop and working with people, so you can search that up. So you want to spend some time in Photoshop. Okay, so we're going to look at this paint tool. So at the bottom of the screen there's a populate button, and then there is foliage, pass, and urban. I'm going to click on foliage, and I'm going to click on paint, and I'm going to drag some models into here to start painting them on the surface. So I'm going to choose my China berry tree. I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to put in my I'll put in a linden tree. Scroll down here a little bit. Some different trees from different types or different places in the world. I'm going to get some evergreen trees. I'm going to bring a blue spruce in, and I'm going to bring in a Colorado spruce. So 1, 2, 3, 4 trees. Let's put a couple more in there just to make it vary. So let's put some orange trees in there, get a little fruit. And how about an olive tree? Why not? Alright, so there's my diameter. Let me just kind of zoom out a little bit here in orbit. So there is the diameter of my brush. I can make that smaller or larger. And I'm going to go ahead and just start painting. I want to paint these trees mostly behind. Put like one in front there. Alright, so I was just holding down my mouse and just painting. So that's just an awesome feature. Really love that. Okay, and you see it shows up as a layer, painted vegetation. So I'm just gonna escape out of all of that. So painted vegetation here shows up. I'm gonna keep calling them layers, even though they're called containers, but it shows up as a container. And if I click on it, I got the 3 dots. You can always look at that and see what to do with the containers. Some good stuff there. Alright, let's, I know there's a way that you can change the properties of these. Like, okay, I clicked on Colorado spruce, and I can change the age of it, so I can make those smaller or larger. I'm going to make this guy here, I'm not sure which one that is, a little bit taller. So maybe that is the sweet orange. Yeah, that's the sweet orange. So I'm making their age a little bit taller. So that's really cool. You can change the density. So you can lower the density, and I'm not sure if that's lowering the density or it's lowering the leaf density. I'll have to look a little further into that. I think it's the amount that it shows. That one makes a nice shadow actually in the foreground. Alright, so let's do the paint to populate again. I'm going to do this with some grasses. So I'm going to choose paint, and I'm going to go over to library, and I'm going to go to vegetation, and I'm going to go to grass and flowers. I'm going to pick lawn 1. Oh, I want to drag that into my populate. So I'm going to drag lawn 1 over, and I'm going to put some wild grass in there. I'm going to put some clovers in there. So like a real grass, a little bit of weeds in there. How about some tall grass? Some tall grass and some violets. Alright, this is going to be really great. And maybe some buttercups, put those in there as well. And I'm going to go ahead and paint this. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And I'm going to paint this in here. All around. Paint a little bit on the patio, like it's bleeding onto the patio. Alright, so let's go to our image and see what this looks like. Oh, fantastic. Sitting in the tall grass. Looks so nice. Just loving that image. Alright, so I think next we got to look at exporting this image out. Trees could be more dense in the background for sure. Alright, so let's save this. And let's head on over to Rhino just to look at our outline. So we did that paint landscape. We had a lot of fun with that. Now we're going to look at render output under media and export, and then we're going to check the stats again. Okay, so under media, under image, we have the format. What format size do we want? So we have full HD by default. We have 4K. We have 8K, and we can go with custom. I'm going to go with a custom. A value that I use a lot for custom, I use 2500. I'm going to type in 2500 by 1500. It's a little bit less cropped. It's not, the aspect ratio is a little bit more, gives us more height with the 1500. So that's a pretty good resolution to render out at. And I'm going to click on export, and I'm going to click on the little plus for image because it needs to know what images to export. And I'm going to choose my, let's click on that plus again. I'm going to choose my camera 01, which is this one. Okay. And I'm going to save it as a PNG. And I'm going to click on Start Export. Okay, it's going to look for a place to save it under my TwinMotion. Call this TwinMotion Basics. Okay, so that's going to take a little bit of time to export out at that high resolution. There it goes. Real-time rendering engine, you gotta love them. So pretty quick, that exported out. So if we look at, let's look at finding that image. Okay, that should be a PNG file. There it is. That just looks really good. It looks really natural in the landscape there. Alright, so the last thing we want to look at now is our stats. See how our stats look. Okay, so I'm going to go here, get that back to library, go to stats. So you see the frame rate dropped considerably from the 100. So we're at 50 some frames, 60 frames per second, which is still, the computer's really performing well with the software. And then it has our amount of polygons, 4.3 million polygons, 29 objects, 1.1 gigabyte in textures. So that's a lot of information that this is handling really well. Let's see our other camera. So that's camera 1. What does our other camera look like? Okay, so that's just on the other side of it, so it's kind of in the trees. We can orbit around in real time. Where's our person? Our person's on the other side. I can always select the person if I can, or select the tree. Type F. F was our shortcut keyboard. Alright. That goes back to that camera. So that's camera 1, that's camera 2, this is camera 1. This is the one I'm really happy with. Alright, I think that's everything. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe when my head pops up in the upper left, and I'll put some videos to some other TwinMotion videos in the upper right. You'll see 2 of those. Alright, have an awesome rest of your day, and I will see you on the next one.